Welcome to Let's Listen, a video podcast in which we have conversations with IBMers about their own neurodiversity and their careers within IBM. I'm Andrew Williams, your IBM host today, and we're going to be listening to Paul Gibbons, a partner for talent transformation globally, who specializes in leadership and change within IBM. And he joined IBM US in December 2021. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
I've been talking to a number of IBM neurodivergents around the world in this podcast, Canada, the USA, Australia, Mexico, but I think you're the first one I've had a chance to talk to from Colorado, which is pretty exciting. And you know, you're an IBM executive as well, and we're going to deep dive in this session about what that means. So can you, Paul, tell us a little bit about you, your personal challenges, and a little bit about your career as an IBMer?
Yeah, certainly. That's how long have we got? I was diagnosed as adult ADHD, and when I was about 50 years old, I was going through a divorce, and I sought help, and they said, "Yeah, man, you got this in spades," and it came as a relief. Now, I've been tested before by a proper shrink back 100 years ago in the UK, and he looked at my accomplishments as a child. One of the diagnostic criteria is that you had to have ADHD as a child in order to have the diagnosis of adult ADHD. I think they've changed the criteria. Because when I was told categorically by a very good shrink, like, "No, man, you can't have it," because I was very accomplished as a child. I mean, I finished college at 19. The dude said, "Look, man," he said, "people with ADHD, they don't make it out of high school. Like, they're in jail. Like, you don't have, So anyway, I mean, that was 20 years ago, and so perhaps the psychiatric profession has, come to a more sophisticated, nuanced realization. But anyway, that's the thing. And then during my 80s, I'm not quiet about this. I've been clean and sober for 30 years, but I had substance abuse disorder, so that was, everybody parties in college. It was perhaps to mask some of the social discomfort I initially felt when I was at college when I was 14, 15 years old or something like that. But anyway, it took off like a rocket train. I worked on Wall Street, and giving a young man with a predilection for alcohol a lot of money is not.
So that was as a derivatives trader, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like putting out the fire with gasoline. Giving someone a lot of money who's got impairments. So that's that. Yes, and it's funny as an ADD person, because there are certain careers which I was super well suited to. One of them is computer programming, because one of the hallmarks, which I obviously didn't know, I've read 30 books on the subject, right? One of the hallmarks is hyperfocusing. And that means that things like computer programming, I was very, very, I used to drill into that thing, and an atomic bomb could go off and I wouldn't be disturbed. And then also in the markets, when you're a trader, you're there's like a pinball machine moving around and shouting prices, and it's a very hyper kinetic job. And so I was very well suited for those. What I'm not well suited for, I think, is my ADHD still afflicts me in social situations. Listening, flaking out, interrupting, attention wandering. And if I don't like the task that I'm doing, I have a tremendous difficulty of marshaling resources. So I'm sort of forced to do work I like, because if I don't like it, I just cannot muster any attention at all. I just can't do it.
So after a programmer and a derivatives trader, you went on to becoming a management consultant for PwC. And was that before or after your diagnosis?
Oh, way before. I mean, I'd already cleaned up from the substance abuse stuff then, so I was, but it's a weird job, because I didn't have the social skills, the listening skills, the interpersonal skills. I was lucky to get a job at PwC. When I did an assessment center, an assessment center, they have like a bunch of people, they had a bunch of partners sitting around a table, a bunch of HR people, and they had a bunch of candidates, and they gave us these exercises and so forth. I did awfully. It's kind of a high stress social environment. My social skills were abysmal. And the higher you go in business, the less important your technical skills are, and the more important your social skills are. How to get along with people, how to listen, how to negotiate, how to form partnerships, and all that kind of stuff. Which, for me, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but for me, is incredibly difficult. And I had to do a lot of hard work to become competent. I think on my good days I'm competent, my bad days I'm not so much.
Maybe you could talk to me about how the different aspects of ADD, how you're challenging that in your day-to-day work within IBM now. It's obviously a very deep part of who you are.
Well, it is. So I mean, there are a couple things. I'm forced to be super engaged in my work. If I don't, I said I have trouble marshaling resources to do something. There's this talk in the world today about something called quiet quitting. And if I don't like what I'm doing, it sort of begins to look like that because I can't marshal. We work hard at this firm, 50, 60 hours a week. A lot of people, right? I mean, some maybe a little less, and some maybe a little more. But it's a place where I just worked on a big proposal, and the hours that even very, very senior put in were very long. So that's an essential thing for me, is to have work that is aligned. This sounds weird, but aligned with my purpose, right? And if I'm not doing that, I'm very apt to be useless at it. On the contrary, if I'm doing something that requires considerable focus and attention, I can be very, very good. So.
So I mean, you talked about your role as an IBM executive, and you're part of the really exciting initiative that the neurodiversity community within IBM initiated a few years ago, the Neurodivergent Executive Out Program. And you're there with other IBM global executives. Could you tell us a little bit about this program and why it's important within IBM?
Well, I mean, my whole life, I felt a little like I was out of step, and I was bullied in high school, kind of mercilessly, and by kids because I was a little flaky and a little weird and a little younger. And then in college, I had trouble adapting to social situations. I found that alcohol helped, for whatever reason. It may not make you more effective, but it makes you think you're more effective. So, and then as I grew up, in my 20s, I had a lot of things where the behavior was no longer tolerable, like this erratic kind of mediocre social skills combined with the substance stuff. So by the time I got to PwC, it's a funny place for me to be, because for someone with ADHD, you wouldn't think management consulting was like a natural fit, because there's so much of it is social skills. So much of it is working in teams. So much of it is the stuff that I was really shitty at. And so that kind of self-acceptance is also, I think, the basis for change, for deep change. There's a kind of thing called Gestalt psychology I studied back in the day. And they said in order to change some aspect of yourself, you have to fully and deeply and embrace it, which is kind of the opposite than most people do. Like when we want to change something ourselves, there's this tendency, like we want to push it away. And actually Gestalt says the opposite. You have to fully embrace it, and only then can you begin to progress. And so it's a self-acceptance, which means I'm more at peace with myself. And there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I tell my kids, I can be super weird, and sometimes I'm an asshole, or something like that. And inside all of that human fallibility, I try and do my best to perform the roles I have in society as an IBM exec, and as a father, as a member of a community, everything like that. So that self-acceptance is super helpful. The other thing is I also have a kid who's afflicted, and again, I know I shouldn't use that word, and he's not been formally diagnosed, but I've kept him away from psychiatrists and medication. But he's ADD, and he's been and had an army of support in school, and he hasn't been labeled, and he hasn't been. When I was in school, I was labeled a bad child, like a bad dysfunctional child, like a bad citizen. And my teacher,
the world really has shifted,
I mean, I still remember my sixth grade teachers 50 years ago, man. 50 years ago, 52 years ago, I was in sixth grade. And I still remember that woman's words echoing my brain. You're a bad kid. It's kind of funny that. And he hasn't had that. They have been extremely welcoming. They've given him additional support. They've taught him listening skills. They've given support with reading, which is very difficult for ADD, kind of flakiness. I was able to hyper-focus when I read. He can't. And so he's had so much support, and it moves me to tears to see the way that he's been embraced with the school system. And now, he's developed coping skills, so he self-manages very well, and he's actually performing at grade level in the subjects he's been struggling with. Now he's 12, right? So that moves me to tears, the fact that we found a way in society to accommodate him and include him. No special schools, no medication, no psychiatrists. Now, I don't want to dissuade anyone from going that route if that's appropriate, but I'm not allowed to prescribe for anyone else, but I can say what's worked for him has been the school has provided him with a set of tools, and I'm warm to that. And then also, in the career at IBM, I am proud to work for a firm that takes this seriously. Very proud, because it's been something that's been difficult for me. It's been difficult for one of my sons particularly. And the fact that the world is becoming the kind of place, I say in one of my books, like, toleration is a very low bar. We don't want to tolerate people. We want to welcome them. We want to nurture them. We want to embrace them. We want to include them. Toleration is a super low bar. And I am moved by the fact that IBM has taken the steps it has to go far beyond toleration and to actually embrace and include people who are non-neurotypical. I think it's an outstanding move for the world and for IBM, I think, and for these people, right?
Well, it's more than that. I think about IBM moving forward with this neurodiversity initiative. IBM didn't do this. It was IBMers who actually developed and created this program. It wasn't executives who defined it. It was actually neurodivergents within IBM who defined it, built it, went up to the management system and said, we need to invest in this. And this is where we're at right now. And now we've got the Executive Out program. What are the objectives of the?
I guess I'm in, right?
Yeah. What's the objectives of the Neurodiversity Executive Out program? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can't speak for the program, but I know that by me sharing my experience, so I've been pretty successful, right? And I don't have to worry too much about what people think of me. But there are people who do, who are earlier in their careers, and to help them feel accepted. And so we can make use of these talents. Some ADDers and some non-neurotypicals have extraordinary gifts in other areas, and we discard them at our peril. And IBM's reputation in diversity, 20 years ago, I gave a talk at an IBM diversity conference. I gave a keynote at one of the diversity conferences 20 years ago, not about neurodivergence, about something else. And IBM had a global reputation for being a leader in the diversity world 20 years ago. A guy called Ted Childs was running the IBM's diversity and inclusion program, and extraordinary human being, from what I understand. I think he's moved on to other pastures. But I'm very proud, and for me, if my words and my writing and my coming out, whatever, can help people earlier in their career find a home, find a way to prosper, if I can help the firm find a way to include these people and make use of their talents, it's good for them, it's good for the firm, and it's good for the world. And so that's a big win. So from my point of view, like, this is an easy ask, is being part of this.
This podcast actually goes out to individuals outside IBM. So I was wondering whether you have any advice to individuals who may be neurodivergent and considering a career in IBM or elsewhere. Would you give them any advice?
Yeah, I think, again, management consulting isn't, perhaps because of the importance of social skills and working on teams, it's not necessarily the easiest place for someone who's Asperger's or ADHD or non-neurotypical some way. One of the things I did when I ended up being a management consultant, I did a ton of personal development work, like a ton. So I dipped in and out of therapy for a year, because a lot of what happened to me when I was young as a result of this stuff was kind of trauma right? And being bullied, you know, having I had a broken hand and a broken collarbone at different stages of my young life. I mean, a lot of people say that, but you know, it was kind of this weirdness thing, and a lot of kids like to take advantage of weirdness. They're not very kind to it. So dealing with that, and then self-acceptance, and then also learning tools and skills, like actually learning how to listen. Like there are times when I actually have to just like use superhuman force to get myself to attend to a meeting, to listen well, to developing those social skills. And listening is one that's very difficult for ADDers. Is essential. So work on yourself and find a greater level of acceptance. If you have to go to therapy for you, then bloody well do that. And then secondly is look at ways for shoring up some of the ways in which there might be shortfall, like skills training as well. So kind of helps us fake it if you want, if you want. So those are two things. And then I'm a big believer in continuing to work on yourself and continuing to push the envelope of what you're able to do as a human being. It's very satisfying to do things that once looked like they were impossible for you. I remember the first time at PwC I had to give a public talk, right? I was so scared. I don't know if this is what happened to me as a kid. I was freaked out. I was 33 years old. I was giving a talk to some new joiners, like 50, 21-year-olds. Like, it shouldn't really have worried me that very much. And I was freaked out. And it's funny now, there was a time when I gave public speaking for a lesson. I was doing keynote speeches and getting paid 5-figure sums to go talk to, you know, several hundred or 1,000 people, right? And that's kind of like an interesting progression from someone who's completely incapable in a social situation, to being, you know, competent or even good. So yeah. So you can work on yourself and, you know, heal the wounds that you may have accumulated over the years, shall we say. That's what I would say.
That's great guidance, Paul. Look, unfortunately, that brings us to the end of this Let's Listen podcast. But I'd really like to thank you for your time and your frankness. And if you're listening to this and you have any questions, feel free to post it below. Otherwise, you can find more information about IBM's neurodiversity program at ibm.biz/Let's Listen. So, as always, thanks for listening to us today at IBM.
Thank you for having me.